Ladies and gentlemen, please, with a rousing ovation, let us stand up as we welcome Africa's fastest man. Put your hands together for Mr. Ferdinand Omanyala. There we go, going for a medal at this year's Paris Olympics. There we go, Africa's fastest man. Sub 10 running, and he's with us here. Always great to see you, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to sit, if you want to walk around.
The stage is yours.
So we'll excuse you as you do your thing first.
Oh, okay.
So you run your sprint, we'll be back.
Yeah. Good afternoon. I think I'll stand. I'm a police officer, so I love standing. Thank you so much for the invite, and I'm happy to see these beautiful faces here today. My name is Ferdinand Omanyala, the guy on the screens. Yeah, sometimes I wonder if I'm the one, but that's me. I'm the fastest man in Africa. I ran the 100 meters 3 years ago, 9.77 seconds. Which is the African record till now, hoping that we'll break it this year. And I'm also the Commonwealth champion. That picture there is for, we were in Birmingham after winning the Commonwealth Games. And that was the first time in 60 years a Kenyan has ever done that. So it means, so today I'm here to inspire you guys, to tell you my story, and make sure you pick something out of it. Because I love doing this. I love inspiring people. I love inspiring generations. That's what I do. I love changing the notion. I love changing the legacy that previous people have left behind. So many people knew me in 2021 when we first made it the Olympics in Tokyo. And so many things happened before that. It took me 6 years to get that level. I started sprinting in 2016 when I was 20. And, you know, some people will say that's a late come into the sport. Previously, I used to play rugby. I was a very good rugby player, and I loved rugby. Rugby was me. I was in rugby physically, emotionally, mentally, everything. In high school, I was a very good rugby winger. My high school was one very good high school in Western called Friends School Kamsinga. Alumni, yeah? Oh, that's good. Yeah, that was my high school then. And we were good in sports and basically academics. So growing up, my dad really wanted me to pursue education because he was a person who really believed in books. And he used to get straight A's. He used to run, but he loved football more. But there's a time when they were supposed to have some trials and going into the national team. Our grandmother, his mom passed away, so he had to travel. So he missed all that. So he decided to now just venture into books. So he wanted us, his sons, to take the same course. I remember he had built us a library at home. And anytime we could get back home, you start with his homework before you do your school homework, because his homework was way worse if you don't do it than doing the school homework. So you could start doing his homework before you do the normal homework. So that's how my childhood was. And we went through good schools. He took us to good schools. Fast forward to Friends School Kamsinga. I joined the rugby team in Form 2. It was a coincidence. I was fast, because when I was at home, anytime my mother or my dad could whip me, I could take off. I remember this one instance. My mother could, we had trees. So anytime in trouble, she or my dad could hold my hand, walk you through to the trees, and pluck a branch, fresh one, from the tree, and whip you so badly. So I remember this one time, something happened at home, and my mom was whipping me, and I managed to slip off her fingers, and I was running. So we ran around 150 meters, she couldn't catch me. So one thing that brought me back was when she said, utaona pale utakula lunch. That means you'll see where you'll eat your lunch. Me and food. So I had to bring myself back. So then, since then, I used to know that I was fast. So when you go to high school and just a bit of, play games with other children, other students, running for food in the dining hall, people knew I was fast. So when the inter-class game came, and I was told, you have only one chance. I mean, you have only one job. Your job is to catch this ball at the wing and run. So all these guys could do the work, do the heavy work, and then get a gap for me, and then pass that ball in 2 misses or 3 misses. My job was just to catch this ball and run straight and get the try line. So that's how the rugby coach noticed me, and he took me up, trained me. In rugby, in all the sports, if you have speed, then you can maneuver in anything. Because in rugby, the only thing now I needed was how to know to sidestep, how to know to hand off these guys, and maybe knock some bodies here and there, while you're going to score the try. So that's who I became. That's who the teacher made me become. So fast forward, I joined the University of Nairobi after high school, and I loved mathematics and chemistry. So I joined the University of Nairobi Chiromo campus, which I'm still in. I'm doing Bachelor of Science in Chemistry. I'm in my 3rd year now, because of so much travel, so you have to defer a lot. So I'm in my 3rd year. So I joined the University of Nairobi, and the first week, I joined the Mean Machine, the rugby club for the university. But now the game out here is tough. It's not the same as high school, because in high school rugby, it's more like rat and cat, They don't. You play it out of passion, but it's not that hard. But when you get out here, people play for money, and the game is tough. So I got into the UON, the University of Nairobi Rugby Club, and looking at the numbers, there are around like 70 people playing for the club, and they only need 23. I looked at the numbers and I said, I don't have any chance here. So I decided to drop down to a lower club level. Then I joined one of the other universities, Mount Kenya universities, which was called Stingers then. So in that club, there was a guy who used to run before. So during the club games, I'm shining all the way. I'm MVP in like a couple of these tournaments. So this guy approached me one afternoon and told me, you're wasting your speed here. You need to go and try athletics. In my entire life, I've never imagined a Kenyan sprinter. So I talked to this guy, and he told me everything. So I went back we were living in the hostels then. Went back to the hostel, downloaded the calendar of events for Athletics Kenya, looked up at events, which are free, by the way. You just show up and run. So I went to one of the first one, my first ever athletics event in 2016 in Mumias, some place uptown. And getting there was so much intimidation, because you see all these guys have been here, seasoned sprinters, getting out of buses, in Kenyan kits, in sheds. You are a first year, you've never done this before. I'm not so comfortable wearing this, so I'm coming in with my rugby gear, with my shorts. If you're playing rugby, if anybody knows about rugby here, we play with kids until they can stand on their own, because it's too dirty. So that's why I came in this event with. So I'm there and I'm asking myself, you can't come from Nairobi all the way here. My dad had just bought me my first ever kits, because my dad understands how the sport is. So he bought me the spikes and all these gears. So I tell myself, you can't come from Nairobi to here and then come and chicken out at this point. So we went up to the start line, and I won the event, miraculously. I won my first ever athletics event in Mumias. So that really built up my confidence, and I got into this mentality that no one can ever beat me in this game. And I told myself that, and that's what I put in my mind. So fast forward, 2017, I made my first national team to the Bahamas, the World Relays. It's happening this year, by the way, in a month, still in Bahamas. So that will be one of the qualifying events for the relay teams to the Olympics. So we went to my first national event in Bahamas. That was in 2017. Came back excited. You've made your national team, first national team after 1 year into the sport. Later on, during that season, there was I had a stumbling block that really costed my years in athletics. So 2017, just before the national championships, we were training at Nyayo Stadium. And then, as we were doing block starts is what we begin the races with, like the blocks you put on the line. And then at some point, one of the reps, I felt a very painful thing on my back. And it got worse. I couldn't even train, I couldn't even walk. So we went to hospital. In hospital, we told this doctor, I have this problem. And by the time we got to the hospital, my whole left leg was numb. You see, you're having your leg here, but you can't feel it. You're just looking at it, but you can't feel it, you can't walk. So the doctor says, I understand there's a nerve problem. There's no need of x-rays, there's no need for MRIs. The only thing you need to do, I'll give you an injection, a painkiller that will ease that off. And we told her, I'm an athlete, I'm competing in a week's time. We get tested every time. So once you give me this medication, you have to make sure it's okay. So she injected me Diprofos on one hand and Tramadol on the other. So we went back to the hostel. It was much easier. The nerve, I think one of my bones on my back had pressed one of the nerves that was affecting my left leg. So went back to the hostel and everything was okay. I could compete the following weekend. But now the side effects of the medication was you lose a lot of strength, you lose muscle. So during that time, we ran the relay and I was tested. I never took it so serious because I've been tested before, so this is normal. The doctor said this medication is okay. So during that year, 3 months later, I went to Taiwan for the World University Games, came back. I remember this day up to date. We were in a studio session with my brothers, they are musicians. So we were recording music, and I got a call from one of the anti-doping officials telling me that you've doped. That's what he said. That's what she said. Omanyala, this is Omanyala? Yes, this is Omanyala. You have doped. That's what she said. Come for your late on Monday. So everything crumbled. Like, I couldn't imagine what's happening. So then, on Monday, went for the letter, looked at it, looked at the ingredient. We realized it was a painkiller that the doctor gave us that had some banned substance in it. So we went and handled the court cases. That was 2017. 2018, the whole of it. The case took 1 year. I did not compete the whole of 2018. And then I was given a 14-month ban. I was out of the sport for 14 months. But it was so hard for me because you're training without knowing your next judgment because it was a painkiller, and the most judgments are always 3 months. So you're training today hoping that you'll compete next week. You go to court, the judge tells you, we'll come back in a month's time. So that took a year. So I came back stronger. I came back like, I was furious. I wanted to make sure that I recover all this lost time. So 2019, start of 2019, the federation comes up with a policy and says, anybody who has ever been banned, no matter what case, you'll never wear the Kenyan colors, ever. So that means I'm the first person just coming out of this ban. So I'm the first person to get affected. I remember I'd made the team to Japan, and the policy was put in place. A week to travel, when others are going for the visa, I was told, Omanyala, you have to leave camp. So I packed my things, went back home. And mind you, I just moved in with my new family. I just gotten my son in 2018, so he was like barely a year old. And now we have bills coming up. We have so many things to take care of. My wife now had to take up a job. She was working twice because she took a job during the day. So I could go to class and come back home, take care of the baby as she goes on for the night shift. So that's how we were for like 8 months. So the following event that really made me sad was the All African Games that was happening the same year. We tried to beg these officials not to put a blanket decision on this policy they have put in place, because not everybody dopes intentionally. So we tried to explain to them. We thought they'd listen to us. But then the All African Games trials, I had run a very fast time during the trials, but they told me it was wind-aided. Because in 100 meters, if they don't want you to proceed, we have wind readings in every 100 meters. So there's a machine that takes the measurement of the wind readings, and if it's more than 2.0 meters per second, then it's an illegal time. So if these guys decide they want to put 2.1, even if you've run a world record, it will never count. So that's what they did for me that whole year. So during that time, they invited me. They did not invite me, actually. The list of the invited athletes for the All African Games trials came like a day. So I saw my name was on the list. I went to court. I got a court order. I came in the morning of the event with my lawyer to the field and told these guys I have to run. So they had to create a heat for me and put me in the last heat with some other just very slow athletes. So I got into the semifinals, but then again, mentally unaffected. That evening I pulled my hamstring muscle. So again, All African Games trials means they're selecting top 3 athletes in every category. So I went and taped my legs. I put like 1 million tapes on my hamstring, so just they can just hold it. So coming for the finals the following morning, I took off the blocks walking, and then I realized the legs could run. So I started running at around 70 meters. And lucky me, I came number 2. So during the selection, they said they'll only select the position once in every event. So that means I miss out on that again. So that was 2019, gone into drains. And you know, I had deferred school because I wanted to like push athletics. I wanted to give athletics everything I got. So that means I got nothing else to do. The only thing I'm doing is training and resting. So in 2020, we started off well. I thought the guys had forgotten what they put in place in 2018. But then COVID happened, and the whole year again went out. So during that year, the rugby coach, then Innocent Simiu, called me and told me, I've had your woes with the federation. I want to bring you back into rugby. And I told God, maybe this is the chance that I've been waiting for all this while. And he took me into the Kenya Sevens training camp. At least we're getting something out of that. So that was November, December. I said, now this is the chance I have. I have to make it to the Olympics with the rugby team. I was putting in hours. I was training so hard, sometimes 8 hours a day, because I could do 4 hours in rugby and then go and do 4 hours of athletics. And then sometimes go to training without lunch because you don't have the luxury of spending money on things that you can pass. So I was training so hard. And then I got into, that was December 2020. So 2021, January, the team manager calls me and tells me the players are complaining because I was getting good every day. And I could beat this season players in training so bad. So the team manager calls me and tells me the players are complaining. There's no way the coach could bring you up without you being in a club. So I was told, you go and get a club, and then we'll call you back from the club. So that means the dream to get to the Olympics, the rugby team again, shattered. So in January, I told myself, now because the rugby team, the rugby sevens begins in June, let me try and make a club and get a club and then start training with them in June. So that means I have 6 months to make sure that I leave everything on track. I knew I was on the wrong side of the federation, and I knew I had 6 months on track. That was in January. Little did I know that the training I was doing in rugby was going to help me in athletics. So in January, there was an event. I show up, and another lesson I want to give you guys is when you get these opportunities, you never know when the opportunities will ever come back again. Because I told myself, any race I'm getting, it doesn't matter even if it's an high school meet, I'll make sure I run my life out. So I got this chance to compete in January 9th, 2021. And I got onto the blocks. This official did not know that I'm running. The only time they knew that I'm running was after the finish line. After I crossed the finish line and they realized the time was too fast. I had run a 10.11, which was the national record, and the fastest time in the world that year. So again, after some time, the results came out and they realized it's a win, and they realized this time is too fast. We can't allow Omanyala to shine. They said it was wind aided. So that time couldn't count. But I was all over the media. But I told myself, I only have 6 months because I was giving up. I was on the edge of, I had been pushed to the wall. They tried my patience. I couldn't wait any longer. So 2021 was my last year in athletics. So during that year, I tried everything. I even went for the police recruitment. And you know, police recruitment for athletics is different because you don't go to the normal field. You go to another different field for sports. So I get there, and I get the same officials in the athletics recruitment center. And they told me they can't select me because, of course, I can't represent the country. But they didn't say that directly. I was told that I passed my exams too high. They can't take me into police. It's fine. So again, got back home, nothing to show. That was in March. We decided to look for casual jobs. I did a bit of casual jobs in town. Carried some metals for Posta from the central business districts, that's the center of town, to railways, that's like 800 meters on wheelbarrows. I remember that time I met one of my athletes when I was doing that job, and oil was all over me because I had to do this for 700 shillings a day. I had to do this because there's no other way I'm going to get an income. You know, so talent is not going to help me because I've been chased from these teams, I've been thrown out of teams. That's the only way I could survive. I met this guy and he cried when he saw me and said, this is what Omanyala has been reduced to. Someone that Kenya could have taken pride of. And that was it. So during that year, that was in March, I remember, you know, in athletics, you have to have an agent, a manager. The job is to look for races for you. So I emailed like around 30 to 40 guys. Only one came back and said, I'll help you. I understand your situation. I'll help you get races, get some money before you leave the track. So he got me 2 races in South Africa. But before I left, my story was all over the media in 2021, the 10.11. And so many people saw that. And one guy, who I always call my destiny helper, came up and told me, I want to help you get the Olympics. But I'm telling this guy, I've tried for 4 years now. I can't wear the national colors. And he said, just leave that to me. You just continue doing the hard work and leave that to me. But I told him, I only have 2 months remaining. That was in April. June, I'm leaving the track. But he continued to insist that I'll make you go to the Olympics. So he started making some calls. And by good luck, one of the calls got to the former president. And he was told there's this good sprinter and there's all these things happening. But then when he was being called, I was in South Africa doing one of the races. So I was called one evening with one of the guys from the federation. And he tells me, we're having meetings because of you. That was at 10 p.m. And I told this guy, you're the guys who've been making me have meetings with myself because of what you've been doing to me. But he said, now this is serious. These guys are discussing about you because they have been called. A very powerful call came in. And they were told if Omanyala is not in the Olympics team, the whole team is not going to the Olympics. So they were trying to get ways to make sure they counter that call. So I was called, and a week to the national trials, the Olympic trials, I was told, you have to get back here and participate in the Olympic trials. And it was a week to. The Olympic qualifying time was 10.05. And as a sprinter, it's very hard for you to run 10.05. If you've been running 10.1, it took me 3 years to to run 10.2 from 10.31. Running 10.24, it took me 3 years just to cut 0.07 seconds. So you can imagine moving from 10.1 to 10.05 in a week. So I told God, if this is the way it will be, let your will be done. So came back. We tried to get an earlier flight to get back to the country. The earliest we could get was Thursday. The trials was on Friday. So got back in. We competed. Luckily, that was a pre-trials. So they said, we'll use these trials to stage a major trial. So I won 10.17. The trials was coming in 3 weeks. So got into the trials, and they put the semis and the finals an hour apart. And they said, we need these guys to qualify. And you know, Kenya with sprints, before me, there was like zero hope. So we get to the field and then get the semifinals. And that day, I think God wanted to make it look like a miracle because it was so chilly. There were clouds everywhere. It was about to rain. And we don't run fast in rainy conditions. We need hot weather conditions because our muscles are like bands. The warmer it gets, the more stretch it gets. So that's us. But that day it was very chilly, it was very cold. Go to the semifinals, ran 10.12. I need to run 10.05 and below in an hour. So go back to the warm-up. I was at the warm-up area and I was telling myself, this is the only chance you got, because after this, if you don't qualify, then that means that's the end of you in athletics. I told God, thank you for everything you've done to me the whole year, but now this is the last chance I have. Got in the stadium. I'm telling myself this is my last race ever in my career. And then, funny thing, the block they put for me in lane 3 was sliding. They had no nails that could, hook these blocks on the tartan track. So that means they knew what they were doing. So I get there, and I'm trying to start off my race. I slide, and I realize this block is not good. But now, luckily, there was a false start. They called us back. So I called one of the guys and told him, go and bring me a hammer and nails. Let's put this block on the ground. And that's what he did. And we ran, and the time of the clock was 10.02. We've qualified for the Olympics. And since then, life turned around for me. I lived all my dreams in 3 months. Went to the Olympics in August. 10 days after Olympics, I ran my first sub 10, 9.96. An hour later, I did 9.86, an equivalent to the African record then. 3 weeks later, I came back to Kenya. I ran 9.77 seconds, the African record. 3 weeks after that, I was called by the head of police in Kenya. Told me he wants to give me a job. I told him I'm not taking this job because I'm in a better place right now. Because a week ago, I just signed my deal with Adidas, so I don't need your money. So I said, it's fine. These are the deals. So he gave me the job, 4 ranks up, and I'll start paying you immediately, and you'll not go for training. I said, now that's what I'll take. And I took the job, I'm now a police. And you see, all these things that I've been looking for, I achieved in 3 months. So the power of not giving up, the power of believing in your dreams, even if nobody believes in your dreams. So that's everything that really, I think that all those challenges that I was going through were setting me up for who I am today. Because now I appreciate what I have. Sometimes you get into these things too early sometimes, not prepared sometimes. Handling multi-millions, sometimes you're not prepared because you don't really understand the value of how hard it is to get this money. So for me, all these challenges were preparing me for this. And one thing I always tell people that I never forget, never take pride in yourself. We're in this world for a short while. We are all passers-by. All these things we have, we'll leave them behind. But one thing will always remain. Appreciate life. Appreciate God for everything that is given you. And never forget to be humble. Because I've lived a life of surviving with $1 a day. I live a life of surviving with anything you want to get in a day. So I know how hard it is on the other side, and I don't want to go back there. When you meet people, say hi to them. It doesn't matter which office you're holding. It doesn't matter who you are. I remember back then I used to really admire the former president because he was sworn in when I was still in high school, and I was telling myself, one day, I'll meet this guy. I met him when I was running the 9.77, and he was jumping like a baby. And he called me up and hugged me, and I told myself, all these people you want to meet in life, all these superstars you want to meet in life, they are people like us. So never be intimidated by anything. Never be intimidated by any position, because these are people like us. They breathe the same air we breathe. Some eat the same food that we eat. Nobody goes to petrol station to be filled with fuel. So they are the same people. So never take pride in yourself, because we are here, we are passers-by, But I'm not saying that you don't work. Make sure you work as hard, and make sure that you'll be remembered. Another thing, leave a legacy. I live a life where I want to leave a legacy. Nobody believed in sprints before. Now anytime anybody mentions sprints, he has to add a Kenyan in that conversation, because we are ranked 9th in the world. Right now we are 3rd in the world going into the Olympics. So that means opportunities. You can change, you can be whoever you want to be in life. You can be wherever you want to be in life. It's all in the mind. Once you put a ceiling in your mind, there's no way you're going to get out of it. It doesn't matter how good you are. So that's my story.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think you need to stand up for this one. One more time for Mr. Ferdinand Omanyala. Oh my God. Wow. You may kindly have your seats.
Please sit there.
Please. Ferdinand, unaweza keti tafadhali. So I've heard his story so many times before, but every time it sounds different yet the same. How many of us have been inspired by that? I mean, I would swear he's failed more than he's succeeded at one point, but now his successes are so high, everybody wants to be like him. And they're now making songs with his name. Yeah. Always a pleasure to have you, bro.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Olumide, first time meeting him, and what are your thoughts?
Honestly, you've really been an inspiration. And listening to what you said and the things you were saying, we have a theme this year, and it's called Build on Success. And for us to really know how to build on success, we must also be able to learn from failure. And your story just encapsulates that. If you were to teach us two things in your, do we call it your failing experience, what would it be? Two things that helps us to keep our eyes on success but not letting go of these things. What would they be?
One thing is, a day will always be 24 hours. There's no day that will be 24 and a half or 25 hours. Life has to move on. It doesn't matter how bad your day is. You have to get up. I've failed more times. I've failed a lot of times on world stages, national duties. I've failed. But the most important thing is how you get back up. I remember there's a story I think most of you are familiar with. I got into one of my races 2 hours before, and still I showed up. I showed up because I've always believed that opportunities come once. I still showed up. I did not perform well. 2 weeks later is when we ran the Commonwealth Games, and I won. So the most important thing is how you get up from your successes, from your failures. I say, fall down 6 times, get back up 7.
That's it.
That one step is a very big thing. And I believe in consistency. I believe in small steps. You can't be Omanyala in a month. You can't be Omanyala in a year. It takes time. So patience, because I believe every time I go for training, I want to be better than I was yesterday. Yeah. I don't want to be anybody else. I always tell people I meet that they are mostly athletes. I tell them, don't be like Omanyala. Create your own story. My story will never be the same as your story. So create your own story. But remember, failures in life is like a boxing match. You're knocked down in the round 2, but you get up in round 3 and continue fighting and win the bout. So that's how life is.
Wow. I mean, a round of applause for him.
A round of applause, please.
Ferdinand, we were looking through our notes and we thought, what do we ask him, to be honest? Like, what do we ask him? But this year is a special year for you. Yeah. You are probably at your fastest, if I'd say that. I'd say you're at your peak in terms of your career. You're running at the Paris 2024 Olympics. How are you feeling about that? And is it coming home this year?
I'll take it back. I've been working with a different coach before this season. So after Budapest last year, the World Championships, I decided to make a change. And this season has proved to be, the change was worthwhile. And another lesson I can say is never regret. Don't get to the point where you regret you could take a chance. You could take a change. Sometimes you're in relationships that you don't want to leave because you've been staying with this guy for 10 years. But don't ever get to a point where you regret that change that you did not make. So for me, at some point I was telling myself, maybe I've made the wrong decision. Maybe it won't work. Maybe those questions. But I've already been proved that that was the best decision I ever made, because a month ago I did 2 60-meter national records in a week. Yeah. So that means the season is looking so much promising than I thought. And going into the Olympics, I don't want to get ahead of myself, of course, because we're having 4 months down the line. As pro athletes, we take races, different races in the world. We're having the Diamond League season coming up starting next month. The Continental Gold Challenge Series, we're having these races coming up before the Olympics. But of course, the main target is the Olympic Games. And the eyes is on the goal. We are going in as number 3 in the world. So that means we are medal contenders. And you never know what may happen. But, I'm a believer. So I always say, let God's will be done.
Absolutely. Yeah. How many of us think there's good gold this year? Yeah? Listen, my prayer, and I think a lot of our prayers would be, any podium finish, we'll take it for now. I mean, because Kenya has never had a sprinter on the Olympic stage, and obviously on the podium. So, I mean, it will be phenomenal. And just to wrap it up, you have an amazing support system in your family.
Yeah.
Your wife, I wish she could have been here with us today. I mean, based on how you've given us your story, she's walked with you this journey. She's believed in you against all odds. I mean, how important is she to you as Ferdinand Omanyala?
Very much, because, at some point she was paying bills for us, me and my son. So that means she believed in me. She believed in the dreams that I had. And not just her. I had a very good support system around me because, if you have friends that are telling you, you can't make it. Of course, there were people who were telling me I can't make it. I remember when I was taking my deferment letter to the university, the guy who was signing it told me, I think you're just ignorant. You can never be like Usain Bolt. So I don't know what he thinks when he sees me right now. But not everybody is always on your side. But I had a very good support system. My wife, my parents, my dad bought me like my first ever spikes, my first ever kits. My mom sends me food from home every time. So they're supporting me always with prayers, with everything they can. Yeah. And of course, my spiritual mom, everybody around me just pushing and pushing and telling me, you can do this. Doesn't matter how hard it is, but just keep pushing. So support system is very important.
Wow, interesting.
Then, just one question from me. Please, a round of applause, please. Family indeed holds a very integral part in how we succeed together. And as Ephraim's Kellen, we are also people that are very mindful about family. Like I said, if we're looking at building on success, now you have such an amazing streak. I feel like sometimes your biggest fear could be the fear of not running as fast or not beating the next record. How do you really build on this success?
One thing I carry around every time is you are as best as your last performance. So that's one thing that really keeps me going because all these sponsors won't be here if you're not running fast. I've run fast. Every time I run fast, the following day is wake up and move on to the next race.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Wow.
That's history. History is anything that happened the last minute. So anytime you compete, that's history. Anytime you do something big, that's history. So what matters is how you're going to make another history so that you can leave a legacy that people will remember. People come up and a year for a year and they leave. So many people are forgotten because of that. But never ride on your previous successes. Of course, you have you need to ride on them, not as much, but just know that it's history. Yeah. I have to create history. If I don't train as hard because I was a Commonwealth champion, someone else wants to be a Commonwealth champion. Someone else is training to beat Omanyala's times. Yeah. So you just can't sleep because everybody else out here is training to beat those records. So that's one thing that really keeps me going. My previous successes make me wake up every day. I don't want to go back to be that kind of sprinter who they say Omanyala was here 10 years ago. Yeah. And after that, he has achieved nothing anymore apart from that. So I want to get this success more and more and more and more.
Interesting. And finally, from my side, before I call on Stephanie just to wrap up and tell us what we should expect in the afternoon. So I've been a big fan of what you've been doing, and I've seen you, against all odds, beat people that, how do I put it, you've looked up to. Yeah. So if you know Johan Blake, one of the fastest runners at one point in the world, Ferdinand came in, beat Johan Blake. And the list is endless. Some of them home, some of them away. And sometimes, and I'd want to know this, because sometimes when you're given targets, and probably in this case, that target is literally next to you on the next line. I've seen situations where you are running, you're just about to start a race. The cameraman will focus on all this other superstars, and everything. Then you just look like this African jungle boy that just showed up in this particular place and just wants to run this race. First of all, how do you keep focus in that particular instance? Because your target is in 100 meters. Yeah. That's all. You just need to push yourself for 100 meters and obviously get to your target. And then secondly, how do you deal with, quote unquote, this other oppositions when you're about to face them?
For information, I'm now the big dog, so...
I know, right? You're the man to beat now.
Cameras are on me every time we begin races. But, you know, like I said, at some point in this talk is never be intimidated. That is the first thing that I took when I went for my first Olympics in Tokyo. I was getting to Tokyo, and most of the messages I was receiving is, just get to the hits. We'll understand if you don't even make it the next round, we'll understand. But I'm telling myself I'm not here to get out of the hits because I qualified like any other. You know, as we're going to the Olympics, the cutoff is 10.00 to get the Olympics. Anybody will be at the Olympics means he qualified to be there. Yep. And everybody is a contender in that start line. So you just can't tell me that guy ran 9.69 10 years ago, so he can beat me now. And for information, by the way, Jon Blake has never beat me ever since we started competing together. But I look up to him.
Low-key flex. Yeah, I like that. Like, let me just flex.
So every time I get to that start line, I go with that mentality that we are all equal. It depends on how fast you're going to get our finish line. At any time we get into stadiums, you know, the build-up to races is always the most hard, the hardest thing. Yeah. Because we're having press conferences, you're being written all over newspapers in those towns. So the pressure is building up. But the moment we get in those stadiums, look up the fans, it's like taking a cow to get slaughtered. There's no way you're going back. There's no way I'm going to go back to the call rooms. There's no way I'm going to go back to the changing rooms because now I can't run.
This is it.
This is it. Now all the pressure always just comes off when I get to those start lines. And the adrenaline pump, I know I'll miss it when I retire. The adrenaline pump, that's something that really carries me through all those finish lines. So I tell myself, never be intimidated. Even if Bolt was competing right now, I know I could have beaten him.
There we go. Because, it's over. No, Bolt. Listen, I thought I had another question, but that's it.
It's the confidence for me.
See, our sprints is like boxing matches. You know, when you see press conferences of boxing games and people come in here with confidence and all that, we say all these words when you get to press conferences. I tell these guys, you'll never beat me. They tell me, you'll never beat me, but when you get to races, it's all about work. Yeah. After that, we are brothers in arms again. Yeah. So it's the sport. We have to be, we have to have the confidence. Sometimes it carries you because, you know, the next person will say, this guy said this last night in the press conference. That means you're serious. But you know yourself, you know that I'm saying this, but there's something that's not right. Yeah. At some point, I get to my rooms and I just look myself in the mirror and say, what have you been talking about in the press conference? Because you're telling the Olympic champions, you're telling the Olympic medalists that are going to beat them. But again, when you get the race, you realize you're beating them. Yeah. So you see, they get intimidated also. But for me, nah, I'm an African.
You're an African.
I love that.
Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, one more time for Africa's fastest man, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Ferdinand Omanyala.